Welcome to the Angling Wisdom Podcast, your go-to source for practical advice and expert insights to enhance your fishing skills. Join us as we explore the science and tactics behind catching diverse freshwater species across North America. We will have expert biologists and anglers share insights into the species we all love to catch. Get ready for the culmination of angling wisdom and fun. I'm your host, Patrick Edwards, and this is the Angling Wisdom Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Angling Wisdom. I'm your host, Patrick Edwards. Thanks for joining us again today. We have a fun topic. This is one that takes me back to when I was just a little guy, and it's all about catching nightcrawlers. And so we're going to jump into how to catch your own nightcrawlers, and one of the methods that I used and I think is the most fun way to do it. But first, let's thank our sponsor, which is PK Lures. And once you catch your crawlers, they have a whole lot of different crawler harness options for you to use those crawlers on, as well as jigs. So if you go to pklure.com, you can check out some of my favorites. One is the PK Dakota Disc. The other is the Wobbler, and another one is the Reef Rig. If you like to troll for walleyes with crawler harnesses off of bottom bouncers, it's a great way to go, and you can use a lot of crawlers doing it. So go to pklure.com. You can use the code WISDOM at checkout to get 20% off your order. So go to pklure.com, put in the code WISDOM, and buy a bunch of those crawler harness options that they have, and you can use this episode and what you learn on here to catch a whole bunch of night crawlers, because they're expensive. I don't know if you guys haven't noticed that, but my friend Jim Zumbo made a post the other day talking about just how crazy expensive a dozen night crawlers is. It's $6. They're like 50 cents a piece. That's insane to me. When I was a little kid, we would go catch them, and I could catch that many in just a few minutes. And so we're going to talk about how to do it. Save you some money. With inflation the way it is, it already costs an arm and a leg to drive to the reservoir to fish, or drive to the river, or wherever you're fishing. So you might as well save some money on the bait. So I'm going to teach you just a fun and challenging way to do this. And a lot of people ask me, why would you want to go catch your own night crawlers? They're slimy, they're gross. Why would you want to do that? It's actually so much fun. My kids love doing it. I love doing it as a kid. It's a challenge, and I'll go into all that. Do something fun, do something challenging. It's really simple to get them to come up in your yard. If you have a yard, it's super easy. So you can do that. Like I said, it's a great way to get your kids engaged, and it's really fun to catch your own bait and then go catch your fish on that bait and then eat the fish that you caught. That's just such a cool thing about fishing, is you can go get your own bait, figure out how to catch the fish, and then prepare them. So that's part of the fun. All right, so I'm going to jump in here. I made some notes so I wouldn't miss anything, but I did some research, which is part of this show. I'm helping you learn some things. There's a lot of information, but yet not much information on night crawlers. I was actually hoping that there would be a whole lot more information available talking about night crawlers so that I would have more to share with you. But unfortunately, there's not a ton of information out there. So I'll give you what I could find. I found that night crawlers can burrow about 6.5 feet down into the ground. That's pretty dang far. So if you're out there going after night crawlers, they could be super deep. Now, most likely that's going to be in the wintertime, but most of the time when you're trying to catch night crawlers, they're not very deep in the ground. And especially in the warmer months, if you water, you can find them pretty readily. But I did not know this. They can eat about a third of their body weight in organic matter. They like to eat things that are decomposing, like leaves and wood and other things like that in the soil. So you'll see them come to the surface and kind of eat that kind of stuff at night. The other thing is they can go up to 14 inches long, which when I was a little kid growing up in Cheyenne, I used to measure the biggest crawlers I could find, because I would catch crawlers and I would measure them. And I caught some up to 13 inches. So I'm getting close to that maximum of 14 inches. That's pretty cool. but they're widely distributed. So just about anybody who's listening to this podcast can go out and catch their own worms at night. Nightcrawlers are unique because they come out of the ground and they squiggle around. And so you can do that just about anywhere that you live. So that's one nice thing about it. They do come out at night because it's cool and it's moist, and because typically there's a few less predators. So one thing that you'll notice about Nightcrawlers is they're consumed by just about everything from bears down to birds, right? Everybody's seen the robin in the yard bouncing around, looking, cocking its head, and then grabbing them and pulling them out of the ground. But what a lot of people don't realize is bears and all kinds of other animals eat them. And of course, we know fish love them. So Nightcrawlers are consumed by just about everything. So they're pretty wary, and they come out at night. And sometimes during rainstorms, they come up as well. And so you can see them after a huge rainstorm. They can be all over the place on sidewalks and in the grass and all kinds of different places. Another thing, though, is that they have both sex organs. So you'll see, and sometimes you get this bonus where you'll be hunting night crawlers and they'll actually be attached to each other. They'll be like laying on top of each other, and you can grab two at a time. That's always the best, because then you can grab more than one when you go to just stock up on them and catch them, which I'll get into in a little bit. But yeah, they are a huge food source for a lot of different animals. So it's not a surprise, I'm sure, to many of you that night crawlers are on the menu for a lot of different animals. The thing that I learned that was pretty interesting is that they can actually sense light with their bodies. I always wondered why, when I would try to catch them at night and I would shine a light down, that they just dart back into their hole. I'm like, how do they see this? They don't have eyes. Apparently, their bodies can sense the light. So we'll talk about that too, about what kind of light to use. The other thing too is their tail is the light colored section. And then if you've ever seen one, they have a red, dark brown section at the other end. That's where their head and their mouth is. And so just so you have a little bit of background about night crawlers, that's a little bit for you. Now, if you're going to use the method that I'm going over, and this is not going to take long, but if you're going to use the method that I like to use, this is what you need. You need to have a yard, you need to have a hose with access to water. You need water for a good 30 to 45 minutes, preferably an hour or two right before the sun goes down. You're going to need a container with some worm bedding in it. And by worm bedding, dirt and some organic material like some kind of decomposing leaves and sticks and that kind of stuff. You'll need a flashlight or a headlamp, some kind of a light source so that you can see them. Because if you can't see them, you can't catch them. And then you need to have a good strong back. So for the method that I use, you spend a lot of time bent over with a light looking for these things. And so if your back is bad, probably not the method for you. But you also need to have nice, very soft footfalls. You don't want to be making a whole bunch of vibrations in the ground, because that will scare those things. They feel that vibration, they shoot back down the hole that they came out of. So soft footfalls is important. So if you have little ones that are running, not going to catch very many. The other thing that you need is patience. It is not as easy as it sounds. Typically, you hear somebody say, you just shine a light down, you see them, you grab them, you pick them up, you put them in a container. Not that simple. So we're going to go over exactly what it entails, but those are the tools you need. You don't need a lot. You don't need a shovel. You don't need any of that. You just need something to contain them in, a light and water, and you need to make sure you water really well. So here's how you do it. So first thing, you want to wait until about an hour after the sun has set. The reason for that is they want to come out when it's dark. Sometimes you can catch them in lower light conditions, but typically they like it when it's dark. So I always just wait until 10:30, somewhere in there when it's dark in the summer. And then I go out and I catch them. You want to shine the light to find them, but you don't want to shine it directly on them. Like I said, they can sense that light. I know a lot of guys that use headlamps and they use the red or the blue or the green. It's a little more toned down. I tend to do that with mine. It definitely makes a difference. But I mean, if you just have your cell phone light or a regular flashlight, that's fine. Both options work. So you can do whatever you want. But you'll see them shoot back in their hole as you walk up. Like if you spook them, you'll see like this really fast movement. It's insane to me how fast night crawlers are. And if you think I'm joking, go try it for yourself. You'll see really fast that these things move quick. Like when you get a light on them or you cause vibration, you scare them, they fly back down that hole. So you have to be on your game. You have to really pay attention. And one of the keys is move slow. And again, have nice soft footfalls. Try not to shine the light directly on them. You want to look for a little bit of that shiny brownish red part, which is their head. And then you'll typically see them. And if you wait longer and wait till the middle of the night, sometimes they come all the way out. Then you can just pick them up. I just don't like to wait till midnight. But you'll see that. You want to bend down nice and slow, have your movements be slow up until the point you snatch down and grab them. You have to be really fast. Because like I said, they can shoot back down the hole. So you want to grab them really quickly. But a mistake that a lot of kids make and that a lot of adults make is they grab them, they pull on them. If you do that, you're going to tear them in half. You don't want to grip them too tight. You also don't want to damage them too much. So what I do is I'll do a quick movement and I'll grab them just tight enough to hold on to them. And what they'll do is they have these little, I don't know, almost like hooks on their body. And it's almost like putting your elbows out in the hole. She'll be like, no, I'm not going to get pulled out. So they'll do that and they'll hold on for dear life. And so what you have to do at that point is just apply steady pressure and just hold. Make sure you don't tear them apart. And if you wait long enough, you'll feel them relax and you can actually pull them out of the hole because they get tired. So that's one of the keys is don't tear them apart. Don't tear them in half. Grab them quickly and then hold on to them and apply just a little bit of pressure. And you'll feel them start to slowly come out. Some of them can last a long time, but you'll eventually get them out. Then you just put them in your container and you got one in the bag. You just earned yourself 50 cents. So they're not hard to catch, but it does take a little bit of time learning how to do it. And if you take kids, they love it, especially once they get good at it. My oldest daughter, she'll be like, I got 14 in my hand. I should probably bring them over to the bucket because we typically have a community container. The challenge, though, is keeping my son from running it through everybody else's spots because he's so excited and eager to catch them. So you might have a kid like that where you have to be like, grab him by the back of the shirt, be like, no, you got to wait. But it's so much fun for the kids. It's a blast for adults. It's a challenge. It's fun. And it will save you some money, especially if you have to water your lawn anyway. You might as well go out and catch some of these things. There's lots of methods to catch night crawlers. This is just my preferred method because it's like hunting, like fishing. You go out and you pursue them and you try to catch them. So I enjoy that a lot. But some of the other methods that you can do is you can wait for a rainstorm. Wyoming, it doesn't rain a whole lot. So maybe you live somewhere where you get lots of prolific rainstorms where you can just walk outside and pick them up off the sidewalk. That's great. Just make sure you have a good container for them. You can dig them up. I always tell people probably the best place to look is like a compost area, garden. Make sure, kids, if you're listening, you're not digging up mom and dad's tomatoes or beans or anything that you shouldn't be digging up. So make sure you get clearance before you dig. Otherwise, you might get in some big trouble. But you can dig them up. The only drawback to that is like a lot of them you end up cutting in half because you can't see them. So you just push the shovel through, tend to cut them in half. Another method that's pretty passive and pretty easy is if you have an open piece of ground and you have some compost laying there and you wet it down really good for a couple of days, you can actually just scoop it back with a shovel and they'll be laying right there. So that's an easy option. You can also put cardboard down, do the same thing, soak that cardboard for a few days, let it sit on the ground, and then again, pull it up. You'll typically have several of them under there, but you're not going to get tons, but you'll have some. And then I've seen other methods I've never tried. So I'm not going to pretend like I know anything about these, but there are people that use electricity to push them out of the ground or entice them out of the ground. I don't know. I don't really know the science behind it, but I've seen people do it on YouTube. And then there's also these guys that have these sticks that they drive into the ground. And then they rub this other stick against it and it creates a vibration that makes the worms come up. I'm not the guy to ask about that one. I just like catching them because it's so much fun and it's a challenge. The other method that I've seen that I probably will never ever do is you can actually mix up Dawn dish soap and water and pour it over like an area where you typically have worms and they'll come up. Bad part about that is if you do too much, you can end up killing whatever lives there as far as vegetation and just getting soap all over the place. Seems like a waste to me. So I'm not going to do that method, but feel free to do what you like. But that's my method. So I would encourage you to get out and try it. Again, this is a short episode. It's just fun. If you want to get your kids engaged and have something that's a really cool activity you can go out and do in the backyard, worm hunting is it. It is a blast. just make sure that the kids have zones and make sure they don't trample everything in your garden either. So if you're going to go out and do it, have a fun time. Send me some pictures. It's a blast. And again, you can save a whole bunch of money by doing it. So go out and catch your own Nightcrawlers, save 50 cents a pop. And again, I hope this has been helpful and insightful. So I hope you'll join me again on the next episode of Angling Wisdom. Thanks for listening to the Angling Wisdom podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please go to patreon.com/anglingwisdom to sign up for bonus content or just to show your support for the show. You can also subscribe wherever you are listening to or watching this podcast. You can follow us on the socials by searching for Angling Wisdom on Instagram or Facebook. Thanks again to PK Lures for sponsoring this show. You can go to pklure.com and use the code WISDOM to receive 20% off of your next order. And of course, you can always go to anglingwisdom.com for more fishing content. This is Patrick Edwards signing off. I hope to see you out on the water.